Shalom Israel. First, I want to start by giving all honor, praises, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakwadash. Double honors into the elders, apostles, and bishops of GMS, Great Millstone, who rule well, teach and edify in peace and blessings, until you hopefully elect Akim and Akwat in his household of faith. My name is Yeshaya from the GMS Arizona Church, Adawan Ratazah. I'm going to make an edifying video. Going into departing from loftiness, right? Because being the fact that the Lord's coming back, all that shit's gonna be set down. Like departing from the spirit of lavish things, or just this world. You can kind of get used to Babylon in a sense of where you enjoy lavish things, your steaks and all that shit, but your nice wines, your nice raiment, like nice clothes and all that. This is the time to really be toned into the spirit. Okay, time to really be in the spirit and worrying about the spirit, not worrying about trying to get money to collect the next new shoes, or stressing out about buying a new whip, or etc. Stressing out about taking a trip, and if it's in your means to do so, by all grace of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, may you have a good time. All right, but it's not, we're not in this truth, to chase good times, per se. We're not here to try to constantly be in a spirit of mirth, like just chasing that that next big thing in our lives carnally. Okay, we need to be seeking the Lord. Okay, so Isaiah 2:11, and it says, "The lofty looks of man shall be humbled, and the haughtiness of man shall be bowed down, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day." Being the fact that the Lord's gonna set all that pride down. The Lord's gonna set a lot of that all the things that people believe in. Right? You got the rich man that believes in his money. Right? You got the man, the militant man that believes in his guns. Okay, you got the fucking Epicurean type people that just believe in their happiness. Okay, pursuing the Acts 17 chapter, if you go into those Epicureans, one of the main things that they believed in is actually doing everything in moderation, to the point of having as much happiness and as much joy in their lives as possible. They believed in Epicureans believed that there was a God, but that there is a God, but that power is indifferent to humans. As if that they're just there as like an animal, in a sense, to do whatever the hell it please. Okay, but departing from all those type of spirits, bro, because that spirit of just seeking pleasure is a bitch. And that's real proud too, because the Lord hasn't even gotten his praise. But yeah, you're sitting here trying to chase pleasure, knowing very well that there's a work to be done here in this faith. Okay, and this is by no means that your wife has to be doom and gloom. If things are within your means, like say you got that, bread to, or you got the time and you got the bread, and through the spirit, you're able to keep up, to have nice things like a nice new whip, or a nice vacation, or a steak dinner, whatever, whatever the means is. You go ahead and do that. Through the spirit, have a balance to it though. Watch it. But once you start getting into the realm of chasing that thing, and and putting off the Lord for that thing, is when you actually, you're walking a path that's gonna end up going off. It's Proverbs 14:12, and it reads, "There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death." So you might be walking in his way that might seem right because it's pleasurable, and you feel like the Lord's dealing with you with it, but the end of that thing could be death. Even Satan himself disguised himself as an angel of light, or the devil himself disguised himself as an angel of light. So it could be really deceptive. Not all pleasures are, good pleasures to be had. Sometimes you could get actually destroyed from all your pleasures. Looking back into even King Solomon, He put the Lord behind him and then started worrying about his pleasures, his woman. He started building those temples unto their gods, and he committed idolatry. He entertaining other gods. The Lord is a jealous power. He doesn't want you to put yourself before him. He doesn't want you to put anything before him. Okay, so when you have that perception, really understand the things that you're doing. Understand that the Lord's watching you do these things, and do your best to offend less, and rehearse the righteous acts to the best of your ability. Romans the 14th chapter and the 8th verse. And it says, for whether we live unto the Lord, or whether we die unto the Lord. Whether we live or die, we are the Lord. So you are a possession of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Through grace, he's brought, us into this truth. It's 100% truth at that. To have the true understanding of this Bible and, all these scriptures, all these breakdowns, the Lashuan Kodash, all these beautiful things that the Lord has uncovered, right? So, through grace, we even have that, and every once in a while when the Lord, wants to give you a bone, he'll give you a bone. Every good gift is from high, as the scriptures say. So sometimes you are going to run into those things that are pretty nice, like, maybe a new little woman or something like that, or maybe you're able to buy a house, things like that. Every good gift is from high. Okay, but your intention is to be chasing Yahweh Hashem Yahushai and not that fucking gift, bro. You're not trying to chase good pleasure. The scriptures say, force not the course of the river in Sirach, I believe, the Apocrypha, or Ecclesiasticus, okay? Force not the course of the river, because what happens when you force the course of a river? What happens when you try to force the river to grow? What happens when you try to force the river to be, stronger, bigger, and more massive? You dry it out. The river naturally grows by breaking itself down and widening naturally over the flow of the water. And this truth is living waters. You have to let that water flow the way it's supposed to. Right? You're not supposed to try to, manipulate it as if you have the power to even do so in the first place. Okay? You can't feel good all the time. Not everything's gonna be your fucking way at the end of the day, man. But I believe there's a precept in here I want to get. Okay, Proverbs 1 and 15 says, my son, walk not in the way with them, refrain thy foot from thy path. And that word refrain also goes into the word to bridle, almost like how you bridle a horse. Okay, so like, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, control your flesh. Bridle that horse, man. Put that control over that horse to get it to do what it is that you want it to do. Because your flesh is going to want to have these things. Your flesh is going to constantly want, and it's never going to be satisfied. There's also a precept in Proverbs I wanted to grab real quick. No. Lucky. So Proverbs 27 and 20, hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. So this flesh is always going to want more, always going to require more. You're going to unlock one thing, and then you're going to try to unlock the next thing. Okay, so, bridle that spirit, pull yourself back into the right spirit to do the right thing. It says, for their feet run to evil and make haste to shed blood. Because a lot of the times when you live a fast life, or you're trying to be pleasurable all the time, that shit will lead to your death, and that shit will lead to wickedness. For example, money. It says, has any man found riches but not, committed sin to get it? It's like, lucky is him. I consider himself lucky because no man has ever been able to do so, roughly paraphrasing. It says, so being the fact that when you live that type of life, bro, this shit, it leads to wickedness. It says James 1 and 15, it says, I'll start at 13. It says, let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, for Yahweh Hashem Yahushua cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. So perceive too that, these devils, Satan, on the left-hand side of the Lord is trying at your spirit. They're trying to stab at it, but the scriptures tell you, let no man take thy crown. Okay, it's important to recognize the spiritual battle and spiritual war that we're in at a constant state. It says, but every man is tempted when he is drawn away from his own lust and enticed. When lust has conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, it bringeth forth death. So when lust has conceived, it bringeth forth sin. So, you can go out of your way when you start lusting after this world and after the fucking things of this world, and that can actually bring forth sin. And when sin is finished, it bringeth forth death. So going back to Proverbs 1:16, it says, for their feet run to evil and make haste to shed blood. Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird, and they lay wait for their own blood. They leak privily for their own lives. Reading that last verse in 18, this is the verse I really wanted to get. It says, but these people set an ambush for themselves. They are trying to get themselves killed. Right? And these are people that commit wickedness, and that commit murders, and go after the flesh, and do all etc. of different type of things, the simple. Okay, so it's really the time to start departing from that simplicity, departing from pleasure, departing from luxuries, because at the end of the day, all that shit's going to be turned upside down by Yahweh Hashem Yahushua with his power. So I pray this lesson was edifying. I want to lastly give all honor, praises, and glory unto Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushua, by Hashem HaKadosh. Shalom.